last time. Yeah.
Okay. So the bottle has come through the tube.
Yeah, it did. No, actually it went with the ferry, but I came with the Eurostar. We tried to, but it was a bit too high.
Okay, so I'm going to let you get on with it, but thank you very much. Round of applause to these guys.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Well, to connect the two, Antwerp, Belgium, and Cowes Isle of Wight, and the Southampton International Boat Show, we'll tell you how this extraordinary contraption, because it is a remarkable contraption we've got here. It was designed and invented initially as a high-speed hydrofoil. And if you go over to it, you'll see pictures of it when it was configured as a giant hydrofoil. And that would have been conceptualized by the creator Fons Erlemans in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he then, uneducated, self-taught, as an adventurer, an inventor, an innovator, and a mariner, and a navigator, that's his sextant there, decided after several voyages, one on a life raft, similar to the one you see next to us, although that's not exactly the model. He attempted to cross the Atlantic in a life raft. He was dropped off a cargo freighter off the Canary Islands. He had a Moroccan crew member, and unfortunately the crew member decided, even though he was a sardine fisherman, that a life raft was a bit too tenuous to cross the Atlantic on. Too late, he couldn't get off. It took them a month before they could be rescued. So that was the only trip that Fons ever made where he had not crossed the Atlantic. The life raft, he's convinced, made it either to Brazil or one of the Caribbean islands. But his second voyage was then on a vessel he called Last Generation. He called it Last Generation in the late 70s because he believed that what he was seeing in the Atlantic, North Atlantic, showed, just as we heard from the people talking to us about seagrass earlier, that things were happening which were not good. He actually got support from the United Nations, and that raft, which he made from metal tubes, with a sail and basically a bit of a shed on top. He sailed that across the Atlantic with his two Moroccan crew members, and that flew the United Nations flag because of the research work he was doing as it drifted over the Atlantic. Landed in Trinidad, brought the vessel back to Antwerp, by which time he was deciding that he needed to try a female crew member. Everyone told him that was not a sensible idea, but Fons was convinced and found someone who was a willing partner called Kay Arlen's, and it was Kay who co-authored the book, The Last Adventurer, which we've published here, who decided to join him on that first vessel brought back on the second voyage, Last Generation 2. And that vessel made it to Barbados on the second voyage, with Kay with him. She then became cited in the Guinness Book of Records as the first woman to raft across the Atlantic. So she made it, and she proved that Fons was right, as she said, and as Fons admits, I could not have made any of these journeys without the woman who was first my crew member and then became my wife. Very sadly, Kay is now with us, but not quite with us because she's living with dementia, so it would have been a wonderful opportunity to have Kay here. Most of the contents of the book, which records the voyages they went on, were notes from Kay. And also, sadly, the indomitable Fons has been grounded and floored by COVID. The dreaded COVID has hit him, and he's unable to be with us, and sends his deep regrets, because this is very much a great experience for him to have seen the bottle on his first trip to the UK. We'll talk to you in a minute about, or we'll allow Koos to take over and talk about the work of the owners of the bottle. He conceptualized, after the second raft crossing, just skimming through, all these crossings are covered in the book. Fons was so interested in what he saw under the water, or on the water, he attempted to build a submarine.